All right, so today we're going to talk about someone whose name you definitely know, but whose story, well, that's a whole other thing. We're going to peel back the legend and get to the man at the heart of it all, Siddhartha Gautama. This isn't just about the Buddha as a figure. It's about the incredible journey he took and the truly revolutionary ideas he brought to the world. So let's get right into it. So here's the question that really kicks everything off, and it is a big one. Think about it. What could possibly make a prince, someone living in complete and total luxury, just walk away from it all? To abandon his kingdom, his family, everything, for a life of, well, a life of suffering? It sounds crazy, right? But understanding why he did it is the key to this entire story. A story that literally changed the course of human thought. Okay, so let's set the scene. We're going back in time, way back to around the 5th century BCE in a place called the Shakya Republic. Today you'd know it as Nepal. And this is where our story begins, with the birth of a boy named Siddhartha Gautama. But here's the thing you have to remember. Before he was the Buddha, before he was the awakened one, he was just a prince who was living in a bubble, completely cut off from what life was really like. I mean, his father, Shuddhodana, basically built a fantasy world for him. He was raised inside a palace where everything was perfect. He was married to a princess, Yashodhara, and they even had a son, Rahula. Every single pleasure you can imagine was at his fingertips. But anything unpleasant? Sickness, old age, death? Nope. All of that was carefully, meticulously hidden from him. The plan was clear. He was being groomed to be a powerful king. But, life has a funny way of messing with the best laid plans. And, of course, a perfect world like that, it just can't last. It's not real. Siddhartha's own curiosity got the better of him, and eventually he ventured outside the palace walls. And what he saw out there, well, it wasn't just an eye-opener. It was something that would completely shatter his entire reality and send him down a path no one could have ever predicted. So for the very first time in his life, he saw things his father had hidden. He saw an old man, weak and bent with age. He saw a diseased man, his body suffering. And then he saw a dead body. These three sights just hit him like a ton of bricks. This was the inescapable truth of life: suffering, decay, death. It was a total shock. But then he saw a fourth person, a wandering ascetic, a spiritual seeker who had nothing, absolutely nothing, and yet he looked completely at peace. And seeing that, well, that planted a seed. It showed him there might be another way to live, another answer entirely. So, completely shaken by these encounters, Siddhartha makes this just monumental decision. At the age of 29, he decides he's leaving. He's leaving it all behind. The palace, his family, his claim to the throne, everything. Why? Because he became obsessed with finding an answer to this problem of suffering. He didn't just want to understand it, he wanted to find a way to end it. So he decides to become what was known as a shramana. Now, this was basically a term for a wandering ascetic. It was a whole movement back then of people who just rejected normal society. They were these spiritual seekers, wanderers, thinkers, all of them looking for some kind of higher truth. And now this prince, Siddhartha, was one of them. And for the next 6 years, man, he went all in. He basically explored the two extreme philosophies of the day. He'd already done one extreme, right? The path of total pleasure and indulgence back in the palace. So now he swung the pendulum to the complete opposite side. He dove headfirst into extreme self-denial. We're talking severe fasting and other practices that pushed his body and his mind to the absolute breaking point, to the brink of death, really. And guess what? It didn't work. All that pain, all that self-torture, it didn't bring him any closer to the truth. And this led him to this incredibly important realization. Neither extreme was the answer. The life of luxury just made his mind lazy and distracted. But this life of extreme punishment, it just made his mind weak and unable to think clearly. The real answer, he figured, had to be somewhere else. It had to be in the middle. And this is the turning point. This is the big moment. He's rejected both luxury and self-torture. So Siddhartha sits down under a large fig tree, the Bodhi tree. He accepts a simple meal of rice and milk, which gives him just enough strength. And he makes a vow. He vows he will not get up from that spot until he has found the truth, no matter what. And it's there, sitting under that tree in deep meditation, that he finally finds it. He discovers what he calls the middle way. And it's important to understand this wasn't some kind of weak compromise. It was a powerful path of moderation, of balance. The great insight was that waking up, finding freedom, it wasn't about indulging your senses or punishing them. It was about training your mind to be balanced, calm, and clear. And in that moment of discovery, everything changed. Siddhartha Gautama, the prince, the ascetic, he was gone. He became the Buddha. And Buddha isn't a name, it's a title. It just means the one who is awake or the enlightened one. And this is a really key point. He didn't become a god. He achieved a state of being, an awakening to how things really are. And he believed that this state wasn't just for him, it was something anyone could achieve. So what do you do after you become enlightened? Well, for the Buddha, the answer was to teach. He spent the next 45 years of his life walking all over India, sharing what he had discovered. And he wasn't preaching about some god in the sky, he was teaching a practical method. Think of it like a doctor. He offered a clear diagnosis of what's wrong with the human condition, and then he gave a very clear prescription for how to cure it. And the core of that teaching, the absolute foundation, is something called the Four Noble Truths. It really is just like a doctor's visit. The first truth is the symptom. Hey, life involves suffering and dissatisfaction. The second is the diagnosis, the cause. The reason we suffer is because of craving and attachment. The third is the prognosis. But here's the good news. There is a cure. It's possible to stop suffering. And the fourth? That's the prescription. It's the path you need to follow to get there. And that prescription, that path, is the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, don't think of this as a list of commandments. It's not like that at all. It's a practical guide, a how-to manual for living the middle way. It covers basically every part of your life, how you think, what you say, how you act, how you make a living, even how you focus your mind. It's a complete training program for your mind. This is the nuts and bolts of how you actually walk the path and end suffering. But you know, a lot of people think this stuff is only for monks meditating on a mountaintop, and that's just not true. The Buddha had so much to say about how everyone, you, me, regular people living regular lives, can find happiness and fulfillment right here and now. And what's really wild is how timeless and practical his advice is. I mean, listen to this. For people who weren't monks, he said happiness comes from four things: working hard and being persistent at your job, being smart with your money and protecting what you earn, surrounding yourself with good friends, and living a balanced life. I mean, does that sound like it was said 2,500 years ago? It could have been written in a self-help book yesterday. It just goes to show you how relevant this all still is. Another thing he was super clear about was that he wasn't a god and didn't want to be treated like one. He said, "I've taught you everything, holding nothing back." His point was, don't rely on me, rely on the teachings. He told people to be an island unto themselves, to be their own refuge. The idea was to trust the path, the Dhamma, and your own effort. The power to wake up, he said, is inside every single one of us. So after 45 years of teaching, the Buddha passed away at the age of 80. And his very last words really sum up his whole message. He said, "All sankharas decay, strive for the goal with diligence." Now, that word sankharas basically just means all conditioned things. Everything that's put together, a chair, a tree, our bodies, our thoughts, everything. He was saying, look, nothing lasts forever. Everything changes. So because of that, don't waste time, pay attention, strive with diligence to find your own freedom. Which leaves us with a final question to think about. We live in a world that is all about extremes, right? It's all or nothing, black and white thinking. We're constantly pulled in a million different directions. So in the middle of all that modern chaos, how can this ancient idea, the principle of a middle way, a path of balance and mindfulness, apply to your life today? How could it bring a little more clarity and maybe a little more peace? That's really something worth pondering.